Welcome back to Magic Hour Podcast, everyone. Taylor Page here.
And this is Claire. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Claire and I were just talking about before we hit record how this Mercury retrograde shadow phase has been so clunky for us. And, it's like happening on the Scorpio Sagittarius. It's like dancing between them. And that's like both of the signs that make up my entire birth chart. So I've been feeling like so impacted. And I know by the time this episode comes out, it will be full blown Mercury retrograde. And we were just talking about how like clunky and annoying. And then like the internet is glitching. And then there was like sound quality things happening. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yes, it's always so nice when I'm feeling that way. And then we connect and you're like, oh, have you been feeling irritable and frustrated? And have things been clunky? And I'm like, okay, great. So it wasn't just me. I've been feeling challenged by it. I even had like irritating dreams last night where, when you wake up and you're just so angry and like that's how you start the day. I feel like I'm shaking it off, but it's been clunky.
And it's kind of like that October listener questions dream part that we talk about in that episode, where it's like in the dream world, that's like the one place we can't downplay our emotions or convince ourselves that we're not angry or sad or that something's going on. It's like the one place we can't lie to ourselves. So maybe that anger coming up in your dreams is like, there's actually more that wants to be processed. And I've definitely been feeling really angry lately.
Yes, I think it was a clear indicator that there's more to work through on these certain things that were coming up for sure.
Yeah. So if you guys are feeling the crunchy clunkiness of Mercury retrograde, just know you're not alone. But it's funny that you bring up your dreams, Claire, because there was a really interesting, profound experience that I wanted to share before we get into this episode today that happened in one of my dreams a couple of nights ago. So, Ronaldo, my dog, doesn't always sleep in the bed with me. He actually like almost prefers not to. He used to beg for it and now he loves his little bed. But yeah, when he comes back from the groomer and he's all clean and stuff, I'm like, you have to sleep by me, little prince, like just for one night. So there was a really interesting thing that happened. So I was sleeping in bed in like a dead sleep, and Ronaldo was sleeping right next to me on his little blanket in the bed, and Ari wasn't there that night. And I was like in a dead sleep, full on in the middle of some elaborate plot dream where I was having a full on conversation in the dream world with someone, like in my dream. And then I became a little lucid in the dream and was aware that I was in a dream. And I felt a spirit presence stepping in the dream, as if I would have been doing mediumship in real life, like how it feels when a spirit person steps in. Had that same feeling in the dream. And then I jolted awake, like the spirit presence that was getting my attention in the dream woke me up. And I woke up and it was pitch black. And Ronaldo is 16 and he's really like little and frail. And our bed is really high up. And he was right about to jump off of the bed and hurt himself like into the darkness. And I grabbed his leg right before he jumped and like was able to put him down on his bed. He was about to just like jump randomly off the bed into pitch blackness and hurt himself. And he's blind too, or like he has cataracts. So he's like pretty blind. And it was so stunning to me because I was like, what just happened? When people in the physical world want to get our attention in the dream world, does it feel like how spirit wants to get our attention in the physical world when they're in the spirit world? And was Ronaldo trying to like get my attention? And I registered it in the dream world as if it was like someone from another world that could just be energy in that world was getting my attention. It was just like it blew my mind, especially the way I woke up and just immediately grabbed Ronaldo. Like it was a really witchy moment.
That is so wild. And I never really thought about it in that way. But yeah, I feel like it must transcend those things, if you are able to feel into the spirit world like you do. It even makes me think of like the telepathy tapes and all of that stuff where it's like, I feel like Ronaldo like got your attention in a way, or maybe, a guide got your attention to help Ronaldo. It's just so interesting.
That's what I was thinking. Like, was Ronaldo's spirit talking to me, or was a spirit guide waking me up? And that's why it felt the same way in the dream as mediumship when I'm here in the physical world. Like, I can't pretend I have any of the answers, but it just blew my mind because I was like, how did I basically just get a mediumship style message in a dream? It was so cool. And then waking up and saving Ronaldo, like it had to be that minute. He was like tensed to jump and I grabbed his little leg.
I love Ronaldo too. I'm so glad you helped him. Sweet guy.
I was like, not my familiar, just like jumping off recklessly. I'm like, I need you to be okay. I need you to live for a long time. Like, just bolted up out of bed as his like witchy mommy just grabbed him.
That's so wild.
I know. I thought that it was so interesting and it just posed a lot of questions. And also, pets have spirits too, and they communicate in the spirit world as well. So it was just really interesting. And I wanted to share it on the pod because I thought it opened up some really cool pathways of thought around like the dream world versus the spirit world versus the physical world and how beings in these different worlds communicate with each other through them, and even thinking about the dream world in that way. And like if the physical world people, like how I was thinking about it is when I talk to my guides or my mom on the other side or angels, it's like, is their experience of it like how mediumship is for us? You know, like, is there something there where it's like that mediumship subtlety for us on all worlds, not just here in the physical world?
I mean, that's like the ultimate question of like what their experience is as a whole, and then also what their experience is in that connection. And oh, it's so interesting. I always wonder too, like when you dream about a person, if they're also dreaming about you or if they ever feel or get a sense of that, like if there's any of that, which is kind of funny too. But I had a dream about you like 2 nights ago. And I totally forgot until you said this. And you were like spooky in the dream. You were like scary to me.
Oh my God.
I know. I forget exactly what was happening, but we were somewhere that I felt like kind of uncertain about. And you were in it and you like turned to me and you had like kind of like a scariness in your energy. And you like came up to me and kind of like tickled my side in this way where I was like, oh my God, she's like up to no good. Like I was like afraid of you. And then in kind of like a lucid way, I was like, no, I do not want that to be happening. And so then it like immediately shifted and then you weren't weird and spooky and something else happened. Now I can't remember how the dream shifted. But I woke up and I was like, weird. Like Taylor was like scary in my dream.
My gosh, that's so interesting. And it's also really interesting because I won't say who, but I had a really visceral dream about a spooky evil energy with a different coven member. And I was like, that's so weird because I know that's not like the truth of who this person is. And it's almost like, I don't know, in dreams, it's like, what do I represent to your psyche? And I know that I talk so much about like overcoming fear of the spirit world and taking power back. And then, like, you did that, and then the dream immediately changed.
Yeah. It does make sense now when you say it like that because I felt like it was like you pushing me in this way. Almost where you were sort of like crossing like a boundary with me and sort of like almost like what coming at me, but like in a way where I was like, scared. And then was just like, no. In the dream, I was like, wait, no, I don't want that. And like shifted it. It was cool.
That's really cool. And it's also hilarious to me that like my big bad way of getting you is tickling your side.
Yeah, it was like you were kind of like riling me, I guess. But I just like knew that I was like, oh no, she's like evil, which is obviously not how I feel about you in any way.
Of course.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is true that it was like about a boundary. I mean, literally before we got into the episode, we were talking about how I'm on this journey of trying to like, be brave enough to stand in my power and not let my fears like get in the way. And I feel like that was almost like an example moment of that, where instead of getting sucked into the fear story in that dream, I, like shut it down and was like, no, I'm not going to choose that.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, with the North Node in Pisces, it's such a time for visceral dreams. And I think the dream world is also like the North Node is what we're here to learn and grow towards and all of these things. And Pisces is the sign of the dreamer. And so I think our dreams are extra heightened with like spiritual messages and growth. It's like it always is such a tool, a valuable tool. But I think right now with the North Node in Pisces, there might even be a little extra layer of magic sprinkled in with like just soul growth and lessons and maybe remembering our dreams a little bit more than usual.
I'm feeling that for sure. Last night's dream was like super vivid and visceral and brought up a lot. So yeah, I feel it.
Me too. And the dream I had about our other coven member is a little less like developed than your dream, but I know it's like a similar type of thing where it's like what that person represents to me and how I can make a more powerful choice than I would have in the past. So it's like also nothing to do with the waking version of her. Like she's like a perfect angel. It's just our psyche, and it can be confusing when you have a dream about somebody that you know because you're like, is this about them? But it's no, it's like what they symbolize to our psyche and what that means about us. So it's so interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up. I think it's really funny. I'm really excited to get into this conversation with Jessica today. This is her second time on the pod. Her first episode was episode 105, and that one was like such a amazing episode. So check that one out too. She's coming on to talk about how to manifest today, which is Lacey Phillips' new book. And I just love it. So good. And just a little side note about it. There's like a part in the book early on, like when I first started reading it, about mini manifestations coming through and kind of like strengthening what she calls the trust muscle, where you start to like see it to believe it. This is like such a small, arbitrary thing. But I was just thinking, I've been like back on my fitness journey and I like joined this new gym and I'm trying to, get back into like feeling good in my body. And I was thinking, like, I have had these like beyond yoga sets for like 8 years and I wear them all the time. And I alternate basically every yoga class, like one of those two sets. And they're just like the best quality. They're so soft. They never fall apart. And I was like, you know what? I would like to get myself another one of those beyond yoga sets. That would be so cool. And so I was like sitting at a cafe reading this book and I had just like set the intention, like maybe I'll go browse, blah, blah. So then I was reading that little chapter on like mini manifestations. And after the meal, I was like, I'm just going to go check out like this little cute neighborhood that I'm by in LA. And it was the first time I ever saw a huge in person Beyond Yoga store. I had never seen one ever anywhere. It's always like Lululemon or Aloe or Viore. Like I've never seen Beyond Yoga. And it was like this huge store full of the cutest sets of Beyond Yoga. I was like, is this a mini manifestation?
For sure. That's so cool. And now I want to check out their stuff.
Yeah, I know. They're so soft. They're so cute. And so I just feel like opening yourself up to magic is almost like teeing your guides to like hit stuff out of the park. And it's just such a fun way to live. And I've really enjoyed this book so far. So without further ado, Jessica Gill is the Chief Content Officer at 2B Magnetic, the leading manifestation brand rooted in neuroscience and psychology, and the host of Expanded Podcast, a top-ranked show with over 40 million downloads. With a background in storytelling and film, Jessica is known for distilling complex spiritual and scientific ideas into clear, digestible tools for personal transformation. As the creative force behind much of TBM's content, Jessica designs the brand's signature tools, including workshops, challenges, and deep imagining meditations for subconscious reprogramming, and has become a trusted voice in teaching the TBM neuromanifestation method to hundreds of thousands of members across 118 plus countries. Jessica played a key role in bringing TBM's debut book, How to Manifest, to life, helping shape its structure, contributing to chapter development, and authoring the guided exercises. She also narrates the audiobook edition. Her grounded approach brings clarity to topics like the neuroscience behind manifestation, how mindset and behavior shape outcomes, and why reprogramming the subconscious is key to manifesting. Her work has been featured in The Cut, Birdie, and Top Wellness podcasts, and she regularly interviews leading experts in the personal growth space on Expanded. Welcome, welcome, Jessica Gill. Jessica, I'm so excited to have you back on Magic Hour podcast this week. Welcome, welcome.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm having such a magical week because I did a session with Kiki, the opulent witch, yesterday. And then we recorded an episode with Lacey's mom, who's a medium. And then we're recording today. I'm like, I feel like the magic is in the air this week.
Yes, all of the witches and mediums are being magnetized to you right now.
I'm here for it. Let's go.
Yes, I love that. So, just a reminder for our audience, what are your big three before we get into everything else?
Yes, I am a Capricorn sun, Cancer rising, and Scorpio moon.
Love it. That is why we just vibe so hard. That goes so well with my big three. So I'm so excited to get into Lacey's new book, How to Manifest. I was telling you before we hit record, I'm 100 pages in, and there's such a symbiotic relationship between To Be Magnetic and Angels and Amethyst because so many people have found me from Expanded, and I read for so many community members. So I just feel very in alignment with the way you guys approach things. And I love to discuss the method. And there's so much crossover between Magic Hour and Expanded too. So I think this conversation is going to be super valuable for everyone.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's the best. I and likewise too. Like I feel like so much. And it's funny how I feel like you'll get pings to share with your community things and I'm like, "Yep, that's the same thing we're going through." Like it's just like that we're all tapped into that similar collective energy.
Yeah, for sure. Like sometimes you guys, without even trying, like the things you launch or whatever, are like so connected to what's happening astrologically or collectively. I feel the same way about you guys. And maybe it is intentional. I don't know.
Honestly, not almost 0% of the things we launch have any astrological pre-planning. We're almost like, of course, universe. Like we're just listening to the pings and we're looking at the calendar. We're like, okay, here. And then we're like, oh, that's the equinox. Oh, that happens to be a giant portal. That's an eclipse. Like, had no idea.
I love that. So, as I was cracking into the book, there was a super simple concept that was almost like a throwaway line, or not a throwaway line, but it just wasn't the focus of the whole chapter, but it hit me really deeply. And I feel like it's sort of at the core of the TBM work, which is when you're calling something in, when you want to manifest something, there can be a shadow underneath it or a fear, a subconscious fear about what the actual reality would be of that reality with the manifestation in it. And I thought that that was such an interesting thing to think about because we all want to like manifest these different things. But sometimes there's a way that we're like, but will I have to abandon my mom that I'm super enmeshed with if I call in this partner? Or will I have to get over my fear of being seen if I manifest this big job that will put me in the spotlight? It's like that concept was so interesting to me that behind everything we want to manifest, there's a perhaps a shadowy fear of what it would mean if we got it.
100%. Yeah, I mean, this is really like almost like the best place to start when you don't have your manifestations, right? If you're like like going for these things, wanting these things, you consciously want them so badly, just even take a journaling exercise or you can sit in what we call a deep imagining or a meditation, something that allows your subconscious to come forward and just ask like if this thing came in tomorrow, what fears might be below the surface, not even conscious but below the surface, that are operating in the background, about what that would mean if that came through. What do you feel like you'd have to give up? What do you feel like you'd be fearful of? What changes would feel uncomfortable? And that usually helps find the block, the part of you that might be subconsciously pushing this thing away out of safety and protection, really.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because that to me is on this vibration of like fear and shadow. But then there's the other energetic end of the spectrum where it's like, I love my life so much and I'm in so much joy and flow that I don't want that to change. And I've found like a commonality. That's how I felt right before I met my husband. Like, I was like, I love my apartment. I love where I live. I love my life. I love my friends. Like, oh, if I meet a partner, like it might have to take me out of everything I built that I loved. And I feel like that's a different vibration where it's like such fulfillment and joy. And then that's actually the place where you do attract what you're calling in.
I would even say that feeling of fulfillment and gratitude for the what is isn't even necessarily a block. Like it's not pushing away your manifestation to feel that gratitude and fulfillment. It's actually kind of almost just like a growing pain. It's like, I'm so happy here, but like there's a knowing that there will be a change or a shift at some point. And even if there's a part of you that's like scared of change, it knows it's being led by the higher self. Whereas the other end of the spectrum, where you're like, really, actually, there's a part of you that's genuinely afraid of what that's going to mean. That's where it's like getting into those inner child patternings. And that's where it's like that deeper inner work. So, for example, let's say you're calling in a certain income level. You're like, I've never crossed this threshold. I know if I go beyond making this much a year, I will just be in a sense of safety and security financially that I've never been in before. And you consciously want it. You really want it. You're trying for it. You're doing all the things. You're taking the action. You're meeting with the right people. You're reaching out, all of it. And it's just not happening. Let's say you grew up with not a lot of money. If you didn't have that growing up, maybe your parents even had messages about like what it meant to be rich or what it meant to be well off, and they kind of judge that and put that down. There may be a subconscious fear that if you now are in this safety, security level, income level, that you have either judgment from your parents or that you're disconnected from them. Now you can't relate to them in the same way anymore. Even though consciously you're like, that's silly. I don't believe that. Like, I really just want it. There is like an inner child part that's like, wait a second, we learned if we get that, we lose this. And so it's almost like pushing away your manifestation ever so slightly to keep the norm, to keep the pattern that you're comfortable with, even if it's not the one you want.
I think that distinction is so powerful because those fears can be so sneaky. Whereas the other end of the spectrum that I was saying before of like fulfillment and gratitude, that's just a natural sense of being a human and change not always being like the most comfortable thing. But that other side of the equation, it's so true. Like, how will getting this thing change the way my needs are being met or force me to relate to things in a new way? I think that that's so interesting. Hitting on the inner child, I always say we should be checking in with our inner child as much as we check in with our spirit guides, because I really believe that our inner child is an internal spirit guide that is connecting us back to our authenticity, what it is to be human, our emotional truth. When everything else tries to be like, don't cry, you're fine, keep pushing forward, the inner child's like, no, this is sad. And it's my truth that I'm sad. And I want you to cry with me. And I think that it is a really powerful internal source of guidance that we've disconnected from a little bit. And so I love that the TBM work really focuses on connecting to that inner child. And so, how can you tell when your inner child is trying to get your attention?
We like to say it's the inner child parts taking the driver's seat. And it's interesting because okay, so I kind of think about it in a few different realms, right? We have the inner child part of us that's our truly authentic self. It's our pure joy, not, you know, corrupted, for lack of a better words, by pain, shame, and programming. So when that part of our inner child is taking the driver's seat, that's when we're in pure play, pure joy, like actual alignment. We feel connected with our current self, our higher self, our inner child. Like everything just feels like flow and we're moving in that path. When our protective parts from our inner child take the driver's seat, that's when things get a little rocky. So I almost want to make like a distinction that there's the inner child that is like the higher magnetic self, but then there's also all of these, and I love internal family systems for this construct of it, but that there's all these almost like protective inner child parts that showed up when we didn't get our needs met or when we experienced pain, shame, or programming, and was like, oh, you were rejected in that way. Okay, I'm going to come to the surface as this archetype to prevent you from ever feeling that pain again or to prevent you from being rejected. It's almost like an ego part kind of steps in as a protection mechanism. So that can look like having a huge emotional reaction and just, being really loud and feeling so many things and in a way that is disproportionate to the circumstances. So something like beyond, if someone is going through a loss, it makes sense that they would be grieving. But if someone stub their toe and they're screaming for hours and you know, and they're like, "Oh, this is because of this guy and it was all his fault." And you know, if you're projecting and you're blaming things on other people, you can feel it. It's a not self. Like you just feel like, "Ooh, that was not my best self I put forward. That was a really petty part of me, or that was a very immature part of me, or that was a part of me that was trying to feel better than them, but that's just because I feel so rejected." You know, when you're really judging people or shaming other people, that's those protector parts kind of rearing their head. Even when we self sabotage, you know, or we're procrastinating something, we're pushing something off, we're not doing the thing we know is going to make us feel good, that's also a protector part. So, kind of seeing those inner child parts as ones that were developed to help you, but are actually now the thing that's standing in the way of you living your aligned life.
Yeah. And I think that the way that inner child brings up those triggers and big emotions and throws tantrums and all of those things is for us to help better understand. Like, there's such valuable information in that. And I think sometimes, like, when we feel blocked or stuck and that inner child is really triggered, it's like by design that we're not getting the next thing or the distraction or what would allow us to continue to move forward until we look inward.
Mhm. The goal is not to get rid of these parts. It's to integrate them. It's to have compassion for them. It's to let them be almost like your roadmap of, ooh, that part of me came up again. I had a huge reaction to, you know, this person not texting me back. It brought up all these feelings of shame. It's actually an invitation to look at those stories of shame, to look at where I'm giving my power away to this person who didn't text me instead of seeing it as, oh, they're probably busy. It's not personal, you know, and how can I actually take my power back in this instance? And then meeting those kind of wounded parts with a lot more compassion instead of like judgment back. You don't want to reject those parts that already feel rejected, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's so powerful. And I think without those like triggered, rejected parts, we would maybe never feel our feelings. We wouldn't have to. So that's what I mean by like a spirit guide that connects us back to our humanness. Because without that, we'd be like floating in a cerebral land of like control and assessment and rumination. But like the inner child is like, actually, I'm serving up this emotion on a silver platter. And underneath this uncomfortable emotion is like a message, a lesson, magic, or more power for you on the other side of it.
100%. I love how you said that.
Yeah. And so to me, as I was reading the book and just what I know about TBM, it feels so connected to the planet Pluto to me. And Pluto is the planet that rules death, rebirth, shadow, but also magnetism. And that's what's so interesting to me about Lacey's work too, is that there's like this natural connection with astrology with her work that I'm not sure if she's as aware of, like, or if it's as intentional, but just as an astrologer and an intuitive, I can't help but see it when I'm reading or connecting with her work. And so Pluto is where Pluto is in our chart is like where our deepest desire and deepest trigger is. And so it's really interesting how that connects to manifestation in this method with like the shadow work, the authentic desires. And Pluto also rules personal power. And so, like, Pluto's big lessons are how can I be more powerful in this moment and let go or be dragged? And so, I think that like desire, even for like feminine energy throughout history, has been demonized for us to even have desire. And there's been a level of needing to like do shadow work and integration around claiming our desires, our true desires without feeling shame. But it reminds me of the devil card in tarot, where it's like, oh my God, that's so scary and evil. But it really is just a human concept that has been painted on the shadow and has made us want to run from a part of ourself that's trying to protect us and demonize it as some outside force when it's really something deeply ugly within that is designed to keep us safe. So I just find so much overlap between Pluto and manifestation. And when we connect to like our deepest shadows, when we feel the fear and do it anyway, when we connect with our authentic desires, that's what makes us the most magnetic.
100%. I mean, yeah, there's so many threads with astrology with this work too. We were talking about like cyclical phases with the moon phases and, having even like Jupiter bringing expansion into things and lifting things up and the sun shining light. But really, it's almost like we're doing the inner work, the inner emotional work of Pluto, of the moon, to then be able to shine the light, to be the sun, to be all of those things. Because I think a lot of other manifestation methods that I've seen out there are so much about just that light. They're like light, 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 everything positive, positivity, wipe over everything. And it's like, A, that's not the true human experience. And you can't really get to the depths of your truth, your desires, your authenticity without going through all the challenging stuff too. And the challenging stuff is going to happen whether we're, doing manifestation work or not consciously. You're manifesting whether you want to be or not consciously. Like just living your life is manifesting. The good things you have in your life are manifesting. So whether you're aware of it or not, your subconscious is calling things in and out of your life at all times. But I think the beauty of this work is it allows you that peek into your blind spots, into the things that are actually running the show in your life of how you're behaving, how you're responding, and allowing you to heal them and relate to them differently and have compassion for them so you can be in the driver's seat as much as possible. So you can have autonomy and freedom and feel magnetic and feel your power and claim your gifts and desires and actually say, I want this. And this feels true and authentic. And it's not from an ego place. It's not to impress my friends. It's not for anyone else except for my heart and my soul. And that's where I'm being led. I think the more people that can step into that space and really claim their desires and do so from a place of like integrity and authenticity, that I think will change so much in the world.
Yeah. And I think that in a world built for duality, only focusing on the light or only focusing on the shadow is never going to work. It's always an integration of both. So that makes perfect sense. And in terms of like connecting to our authentic desires, I think it's a really interesting time to be a woman in the world because consciousness is shifting and changing so much. And we're being told what to think and what to want and what to do. And sometimes we're being shamed for what we do or don't want. And it's really interesting because I'm in this place where I'm like married to the love of my life. We've been married for almost 4 years. And I'm really like on the fence about if I want kids or not. And I'm deconstructing that. And I feel like I should want to have kids, but is it just that I lost my mom? And so I'm scared to become a mom, or do I really want kids? And I've just been like, kind of in this frenzied place. And if you're on TikTok, there's like you can get into these algorithms of people like being like, never get married, never have kids, or the flip side of like, this is the best thing. Like, there's so many opinions out there for like what we should want. And when you're disconnected from your own heart and center, you're like frantically looking for clues of like, what resonates with me? How do I feel about that? And so I also feel like it's just this moment of like, the tools of TBM are really powerful to connect back to like, what actually do I want to manifest versus what society, our family, or our ego is wanting to manifest.
I think you are so spot on there. And the other kind of nuance I want to echo to that is I think we are even less aware of how much we're being encoded and embedded with the messages. I think even as someone I feel very self aware, I'm constantly checking in with myself. I have to again check myself after I'm on social media or after I take in anything online of like, wait a second, is that my actual desire? What is authentic to me? Because I think we can be inspired by things. We can see things online, not even looking for answers, but we just absorb them. We just see them. Someone's story scrolls by, you see this, you see that, and you're like, wow, that looks nice. I want that. Or I think I want that. Or that would be great. Or why don't I have that? And it's very subtle. It's very, very subtle. And you really have to catch it and be like, wait, let's put this to the side for a second. What is I almost have the visual of like like noise, 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 and then everything goes and it's just like very quiet and you hear your own thoughts for a second. I feel like constantly, especially after ingesting anything on social media, I need a second of like wipe it clean. Like I need to disconnect from any messages and just go back to but what's true in front of me right now. Cause I feel like even if something inspires you and it feels expansive, it's expansive, yes, and that could be good, but it's not expansive literally doing the exact same thing they're doing. You know? And so how do you differentiate besides going back in and checking in with what is true for me in this moment, what is true for me right now? Or could you just appreciate that they have that in their life and you may have a different path or it may look different? And that doesn't mean it's any better or worse than the other person's or that you need to strive to have theirs. Like yours is just as important as whatever anyone else's, even if you admire their path.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think boundaries with social media is so important because we are like sponges. And even if our conscious mind is like, okay, I'm gonna, not think about that. Our subconscious is like, I just saw proof that, like, going back to the kids thing, like having kids is miserable and all these ladies are complaining about it. And then I'm like, that makes me more confused. Like, is that really how I feel? Or is that just what I've absorbed? And now I'm scared. And so I think like strong boundaries with social media in the manifestation process is so important to stay in your truth. And I couldn't agree more with you about that, like download of the noise turning off and dropping into sacred silence and stillness, because I think in this world of constant information overload, it's more important than ever to go inwards and connect with our truth about things and stay in our voice and our power and lead with our heart so that we don't turn into just another part of an algorithm. We stay connected to our heart and our truth and our unique frequency. And that will always give us the answer that we're looking for, never anything outside.
It's so true. And I think also developing what that process looks like with yourself, right? Because I think it's taken me years to understand I get my most creative ideas when I'm on walks. So, like now, when we have team content calls and we're brainstorming what we're going to talk about and do, I used to sit at my desk and I noticed my energy after these calls would tank. And I'm like, these are creative calls. I live for creative calls. Like, why do I feel so exhausted after? And I was like, oh, I need to be moving and digesting the information and allowing new ideas to come in. And that works best on walks. So I will just pace around my house or backyard whenever we're on these calls. If I have to like dream big, I'll go on walks in nature. Like that is just how it works for me. But everyone is so different. Like someone might need stillness in a room with no noise around to have those visions come in. So I think working with and experimenting what things allow those portals to open for you in your mind's eye, allow your crown to open, your third eye to open, the creativity to come in will help you with that connection too.
Yeah, and your body and your intuition is always speaking to you. So it will make very clear what's not working. And so that like first step of seeing what's not working is very valuable information, and then just sort of following whatever pulls to you or playing or experimenting with what does work. Like for me, I love to take long baths. I'm in there for like 4 hours. I feel rejuvenated. I'm constantly putting more hot water in and just like laying like a little shell. So whatever is going to bring you back into your center. I love the walk idea too, especially with like no podcast, no music, just like walking in silence is so powerful.
Okay, I went on a walk last night. I walked for like an hour and 10 minutes. I was like, oh, I felt it was so stimulating. Like I learned so much and I was just in my head. Like there was no music on, nothing.
Yeah, that's so funny. So, something I want to ask about that's really important, and I think a lot of people might be struggling with, is manifesting when you're part of a partnership. And I think it can be a really tricky thing when you're maybe aware or doing work on yourself or clear and all of those things. And then you have a partner that's like dragging their feet or hard to communicate with, or it's just hard to get on the same page with what you're calling in and the life that you want to create together, and how that makes the energy a little more crunchy in the manifestation process.
Yes, it's twofold. So, when you're manifesting with a partner, if you are both fully aligned, very clear on the same goals, the same trajectories, you're both working on your internal blocks and fears and all the things, you can manifest faster, right? Like, have the power of collective intention, you can manifest faster. That being said, you also are dealing with two different people on two different journeys, on two different healing timelines. And sometimes it moves faster if everything is aligned and, divine timing. Sometimes it moves slower, and you need patience to allow the other person to really meet you in their journey. But a couple of tips I would share with people who are navigating that or feeling, resentful that their partner's not moving as fast as them or aligned with them. One is to have a really clear conversation with them with no judgment, with no shame, and both allowing both parties to fully express what they actually want in whatever the situation is you're calling in. So let's say you're calling in a home together, or you're calling in travel together, or what you want to be for parents, the timeline for parenthood. It needs to feel like a safe enough conversation that you could have different opinions, but both are valid, and that you both respect each person's opinions. I think it really starts there. And that almost is like the hardest part, because if you're like, I want kids now, and the other partner is like, I want kids in like 5 years, and you're in this push and pull, your protector inner child parts are like, he's blocking us. How could he do this? Like, you better get on board. This is what we're doing. I'm not waiting any longer. And then his protector parts are going to come aboard. She's stifling us. I'm not ready. I'm freaking out, and then you guys are on opposite ends. You almost have to create a container between the two of you where you can freely share what you want, full stop, without judgment and without thinking that either person's wishes are going to become what you choose. Like, you will figure out a compromise between the two of you, but both of you need to feel safe to feel heard in the experience. So I think a lot of people miss that step completely. It's usually one person saying, we want this, get on board. And part of what's blocking it is there was no clarity, there's no communication. It wasn't safe for the other person to express any of their feelings on it. So I think having that really open, intentional conversation can help clear things away first and foremost. And I would even suggest having that conversation, just sharing fully without any judgment, shame, or making the other person's desires wrong or timeline wrong, and say, okay, I'm going to give it a day and think about it. And then think about their side, and they'll think about your side. And then your brain will naturally, especially if you're regulated doing it, we'll start to have some creative solutions. Well, okay, if I'm here and they're over here, hmm, could I wait a few months? Like, would that feel okay? I wonder, like, what would feel like my longest window for this. Okay, let's try to come up with creative solutions. And then maybe have another meeting where you're like, look, these are kind of my parameters. These are my boundaries. They can share theirs. And usually the spectrum widens a little bit there, and you guys can get really clear and call in something intentionally together. And that's when you can like write your list and be like, okay, maybe we don't wait 5 years. Maybe we don't have a kid right now. Maybe we wait a year and a half. That feels like a healthy compromise. We both feel good about that. We're excited. We're on the same page. Okay, boom, let's write it down, all of the things. I think if you start from that place, you're already in such a better position. But those are really the hardest steps, is having that conversation without all that activation coming up. And then you have both of your intentions moving together. And then also patience for the other person, maybe not moving as fast as you want to be moving, or moving through that inner work, especially if you're in a partnership. Is their lack of moving as fast as you want to move actually a beautiful lesson for you to release timelines, to surrender? And this is not saying you completely give up your needs for them, but this is saying, as you're going, if it feels like they might need a little more time with it, is there something that you could do in the interim now to call in what you want without depending on them? So I know a lot of people are like, especially when they're calling in money between a family unit, they're like, well, this partner's not here and I'm over here and they're not manifesting money as fast as I am and all of these things. In that case, do you want more money for a certain lifestyle? Do you have a goal? Is this a sense of security? Is this something you can take into your own hands and manifest for yourself so you feel fully secure and they're free to go about it in their own timeline? So just getting really clear on anywhere you may be projecting onto them about the dynamic as well. But it is very nuanced and tricky.
Yes. That's all such great advice, and I think that, like, nothing can trigger us like our most intimate partnerships because it's like it feels like the world is falling apart if they're not on the same page sometimes, if you're not in that sense of, like, inner regulation and trust, and I so agree with what you said, and I think, like, a trap of those of us, like, quote, unquote, "doing the work" is that our ego can start to get involved, and we can think of ourselves as, like, the more healed, enlightened one that's trying to teach the other one, and a message that I got about that is like when we think it's our job to like wake someone up or teach someone a spiritual lesson, oftentimes they're actually teaching us a bigger one about ourselves. And I think that like co-creation and partnership, it's not just like I've done all my work and I'm healed, but like if your partner isn't on the same page and you feel the need to change, control, debate, fix, teach, you've shifted the focus off of your own evolution, growth, soul lessons, and are like in a little petri dish of trying to control your partners or whoever's. It might not be your partner, it might be a family member or someone else. And so I think that just what you said about like they might be teaching you a lesson about trusting the timing or, pulling you to a deeper sense of like self regulation or meeting your own needs or questioning what you're making that mean about yourself or your life satisfaction. And so I think it's also interesting and powerful.
Whenever we feel above or beneath someone, there's always some sense of that inner child wounding at play. So if we feel like we know better, why aren't they here? Right then and there, you can be like, that's not my higher self. I have something to learn here. I've definitely fallen into that trap before too, where I'm like, "Oh, he just needs to get on board with this idea or thing that I'm stirring up." And actually really listening and understanding his journey helps me listen and understand my own journey. And the challenge isn't that your partner's not moving in the same timeline as you. The challenge is that you are trying to control this outcome, or the challenge is you're having trouble speaking your needs to your partner, or the challenge is that you are racing down something from ego instead of, alignment and authenticity. Like there could be a million different things that are presenting, but hardly ever is it my partner's not moving fast enough. I need to kick him to the curb. It's usually they're helping you learn a lesson there.
Yeah, 100%. And so, a common theme that we were kind of talking about a little before we hit record is that a lot of people this year have been navigating big transitions, big phoenix energy, death and rebirth portals, big time periods of change and unknown, but then maybe not knowing really what comes next to fill it and just kind of feeling around in the dark a lot. So, what would you say to people who find themselves in these places where they're like, I know what's happening isn't working and that I'm ready for a change, but I feel really lost or confused of how to even move forward from this place?
Yeah. I'm seeing this on so many different levels, like people in deep, deep, deep rock bottoms and just feeling lost and like the waves are hitting them. And they're like, I don't know how to pick up the pieces. Like, I just know this isn't the right path, but I'm not exactly sure what is. And then there's people where there's a lot of stripping, right? Like things are falling out of their life and they're like, I knew that wasn't a line, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to pull in next or what's going on there. So, the one thing is you're not alone, that this stripping and this movement is very intentional, and part of the intention is to remove the things that are not aligned with you, to remove the egos, the personas, the identities, the things that we've been attaching to that aren't serving our highest good, our highest purpose, and to start listening to the whispers of where that purpose in this season of life is coming in. We have a speaking tour coming up this fall. And one of the big things we're talking about there is how to listen in. We have a purpose and soul's essence, deep imagining we created to help people just like take a second and listen to the whispers of what is coming through for your purpose, how to serve, how to spread your light, how to spread your gifts in this world in this season of life. And I think so many times we think of purpose as like a career title or, something we do or something we have to find or something we have to claim. And really, we see purpose as this ever evolving way that we are showing up in alignment with our authenticity, with our gifts, with our magic. Like the more that we can get clear on what is it that's being called from me right now and how can I be of service to the highest good, that is really connecting with your purpose. And it can change from season to season. Like sometimes your purpose could be being the best present mother and showing up for your kids. Sometime that purpose could be sharing your art and gifts and crafts with the world. Sometimes that could be really understanding how to handle all the logistics for a company that doesn't pay attention to them at all, and you're really helping ground them and give them structures and certainty in their business, right? So purpose can change at all seasons. And I think right now, what is making it almost harder for people is that they're ignoring a little bit of some of the lessons, the intuitive pings, the spirit guidance that is coming through that's almost like pulling their heart space forward. Like that's the visual I get. It's like your heart space is like being led here. And either the direction you're being led feels scary, feels unknown, feels like I can't do that, or who am I to do that, or I don't have time for that, or yeah, that would be fun if I was like financially secure and could had all the time in the world, but they're doubting it for some reason, and then all this internal external pressure is like crumbling around them. So I think this season it's really important to just find space to listen to those little whispers. It's that inner child piece that's like coming up and it's like, "Hey, you forgot about this," or like, "Remember this thing I shared with you in a whisper, like, why aren't you taking action on that yet? Why are you avoiding that?" Even in a little way, like, we're showing you the path, and it might not make sense either. So many times we'll get pings or whispers to go in a certain direction. You're like, "This doesn't serve the thing I'm even manifesting right now. Like, how does this make sense?" And I think it's really asking a lot of trust of us in this moment. But I think processing the grief of the falling off, really making space for that grief because there is a lot of grief, but then listening and creating space for those whispers will be such medicine in moving through it.
Such powerful advice. And I was saying, like, sometimes outsource our power to our angels and our guides. And that's when, like, the pendulum stops. The cards don't resonate. The signs are confusing us. We're getting in our head. And I think that that's like the universe and our angels being like, you already know. So we're not going to let you outsource your power to us anymore. And there's just this sense of like divination for like clients or professional, or like what I do professionally is an outward spiral, but self divination is an inward spiral. And I think that a lot of people are in this moment, and self divination and all divination is purposely set up in a way where we have to feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's like so like subtle and fragile and precarious in the beginning that you just have to trust it. Kind of goes back to this message I gave of like, in the alchemical process of phoenix energy, the fire element equals bravery. Like bravery is that fire because any new beginning takes bravery of moving through the unknown. It's like that Aries energy of like jumping off of a cliff fool energy. And so I feel like we're in this moment, just like you said, I could not agree more of like people hearing the whispers, but we get really good at what we practice. And we're so in the practice of looking at external things to meet our needs or to be markers of our success instead of feeling our way through life, feeling our way from a heart led place. We think our way through life. And then we get to this place where it's like, but this doesn't feel good anymore. And it's like, our heart is like, this is what I need. And our head is like, let me construct a way for us to get it. And then we feel lost. And so I think it's a good thing when your life isn't resonating anymore because it shows you're ready for an up level because your heart is ready for a new need to be met. And I think going deeper inward into like, what's my emotional truth? How do I feel right now? And how can I trust those little nudges without my head being like, what does that mean for my whole life and for my 5-year plan? And how can I make money on it? And I would never be good enough. And like all of that is going to come up. But if you can just trust the next little nudge, the next little nudge, the next little nudge, and it's like psychic feeling, you can see with psychic feeling. That's why psychic feeling is like the most powerful clair because you can feel and see with it and know kind of and hear. Like you can almost feel the name of someone. It's really interesting. You can feel your way through the dark psychically. And so I think that that's almost this like bigger pattern that's being asked of us right now. Whereas like clairvoyance is just a clear flash of like the exact thing. Clairsentience, which is like connection to psychic feeling, is like you can feel what's next, what's next, what's next. It's why the hands are like the second eyes for people who can't see physically. And I think that's the lesson collectively that we're being pushed to learn right now is like feeling our way forward, feeling to see. And I think that that is so reflective of the North Node being in Pisces and the South Node being in Virgo.
There's a lot of feeling of karmic destiny, like big time led callings. And big doesn't have to mean what our ego thinks big means. Like big could mean a big way of showing up for your family that is breaking generational cycles. Big doesn't have to mean like massive scale. It just means like the ripple effect, the impact of how you show up. It feels very important, like especially right now. We're right at that cusp, and it's like everyone needs to get their truth led selves forward because it's so important that if we can step forward from there, we swing things in hopefully a more positive direction for the future. And I even think about like, purpose can also be how you interact with the world, right? So if your purpose is like I see joy in all the little moments and you love the bug on a leaf and you love the sunset and you love nature and you share those images online and you talk about them and when you're with friends you point out the little details, like that could be a very big important purpose that you're weaving now into the culture of that presence. Like you're teaching presence by you following your bliss and your joy and the things that light you up and catch your eye. That is having the ripple effect on everyone around you too. So I just want people to not discredit like what they think it needs to look like from an ego perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also going back to what you were saying about like you kind of know the next little step, but then you talk yourself out of it. I think that is really important too, because, in the book, Lacey talks about like the trifecta of her method, which is expanding, unblocking, and then taking aligned action. And I think so often people get stuck in the expanding and unblocking because it's so cerebral. And that's like the muscle that we're used to practicing is like, intellectualizing things, recognizing patterns, talking about things, even looking at examples of what we want. But then when it comes to actually taking aligned action in a new way that feels very vulnerable, that to me is where there's like sometimes a little disconnect, and people are like, I don't get it. I see this all the time in love life readings where they're like, I see my patterns, I'm doing the shadow work, and my partner still isn't coming. And it's like, this has turned into work. There's nothing like heart led or joyful or being called from like a soul place in this way. It's all like analytical and trying to protect yourself and almost trying to like pass a test to prove that they're worthy, and then continually making that mean that they're not when it doesn't come through, when in reality it's like, does this actually feel aligned? Are you having fun? Going back to that idea of like feeling your way through the dark, like what does this feel like a should or like an actual aligned action step?
100%. And I think so many times with aligned action, people think it's so directly related to the manifestation. So, like, let's say they're calling in the dream partner, right? And someone presents that isn't responsive and they used to settle for emotionally unavailable people before. And they're like, great, I said no, I did my aligned action. Okay, that's great. And what are the other micro ways that you're communicating your self worth and how you value yourself on a day to day basis? So, if you're saying that, but then you have this passion project you want to put out, but you're too scared to put that out. Stepping through that fear and sharing that is going to actually connect to the romantic relationship. Like all of it roots back to self-worth. And so even looking at little habits, what are those little habits communicating back to yourself about where your self-worth lies? Are you someone that you can trust? Meaning, if you have all these things make you feel good and nourished on a day-to-day basis, are you following through with them? Or are you not? Are you opting out? Are you numbing? Are you self-sabotaging? Because what you're communicating is, I can't trust myself to show up for myself. And if I can't trust myself, then no one else is going to trust me. And so there we go. Let's push a partner away because I'm not ready yet. So it's like all these little micro actions. I recently changed one of my habits where I would check my Slack like first thing in the morning on my phone. As much as I know it's bad for me and I know it's not good, it was habitual. I just would grab my phone and check my Slack. And then about a month or so ago, it just like hit me like a lightning bolt. I was like, you know what? I'm going to plug it in on the other side of the room on airplane mode. And first thing in the morning, instead of checking my phone, I'm going to get up and go to my office and meditate. No phone, keep it on airplane mode, and something just shifted inside of me. And it was such a small little habit. And everyone tells you to do all these things in the morning routine. But this little habit communicated that my time was sacred and my time with stillness was sacred. And the ripple effect that had in so many aspects in my life, like I wound up manifesting all these income portals popping up around the same time. And it's just that little tiny action that is just repeated to yourself every single day. Like, my time is valuable. My time with self is valuable. My energy is valuable. I'm going to check in with myself before giving out to someone else. Because what does it signal when I check Slack? It signals I can't rest until I take care of everyone else's needs. That's what it's signaling. But when I say, no, I'm going to take this other action, it is now signaling the self-worth, and thus more things can come through that feel aligned.
Yes, that's such a powerful story. And so inspired by it too, because I know I need better phone hygiene in the morning. So I really love that. And it's so true. Like, it's not always as literal as XYZ. It's sometimes AZX. Like, it can go in like so many different directions. And I think that's why the head tries to make it linear and make us understand it, and gets into ego stories of, if I was really healed or if I was really worthy, I would quote unquote pass this test, instead of seeing it as an opportunity for a new, healed, powerful choice. It's like making it mean something that then makes you feel even more blocked and more stuck and more in self loathing, which is more of that cerebral versus aligned action. But yeah, I think that that's so powerful, because sometimes it really is just these little habits or little ways of relating that are enforcing a subconscious thing that is keeping us from the bigger picture of what we're calling in. I think that's really powerful. And I think, just really quickly before I say the last thing I want to say, what would you say to people who are getting so in their head and down on themselves about their manifestations not coming through, or feeling like they're falling victim to that if then thinking, if I was healed, then this would happen in this way, in this timing? Like, just feeling like the head is running the show and they're getting really discouraged because they feel like they're doing all of the things, but then not seeing anything happening yet.
Okay, I actually want to do it through a feeling sense. The feeling that you are having right now when you're putting the tools and the process on a pedestal is actually in a way to keep you disempowered, because there's fear if you get it, fear if you change this narrative that you can never have what you want. There's been such longing for people who are in that space that the feeling is like, I'm chasing, I'm chasing, I'm chasing, I'm chasing, that they have to move to the sensation of it's arrived, and not that the manifestation has arrived, but that like they can settle. There's almost a nervous system like dysregulation in the longing, where they think that they're almost like self-soothing by continuing to long, like a sense of control. If I continue to long for this, if I continue to want for it, I have a very clear step forward. I know my place. I know the rules I have to follow to get this thing. Like I know how to get it. It feels like boom, boom, boom. And actually, you have to kind of let that crumble for a second and arrive in your current space, feeling into your current power without the thing. Like, forget about the thing. Where can you source your current power here? How can you see yourself as worthy, capable, powerful, magnetic, authentic here in this moment? How can you see the gifts you have right now? How can you see the blessings you have right now? Enjoy them, have gratitude for them, like sit in your blessings right now without needing this longing to be operating. It almost like the feeling of the longing feels safer than the feeling of arrival. And so I just I would give this person the tools of the nervous system regulation work. Like we have a regulate DI, we have a safe DI, a reset DI, dropping back into the body. And then it's really about amplifying their gifts right now. In the longing, they are missing so much of the current gifts. And until they can see the gifts of right here, they're not going to be able to easily match with that next thing. I would actually do the worst case scenario DI because in that deep imagining, you basically process never getting the thing. And you're like, if I never got it, what would that say about me? What would happen? What would I do? And this isn't to, it doesn't put, negative energy towards it. It just allows you to detach from the outcome. And when you detach from the outcome, you're like, okay, if I don't get that, I still have my joy. I still love these things. I could maybe do this instead. I could change my career path to this. If I didn't get that, like, wow, I could go on so many trips with girlfriends, or I could do, like your mind starts opening up to all the pleasures of life that don't involve that thing. And in a weird way of detaching from it allows you that surrender for it to come in its own divine timing. So you're no longer putting it on this longing pedestal, but you're actually just seeing it as like the feeling you'll feel when you're going to manifest something is like you're in here enjoying life. And it's just like one of the many amazing things in life dancing around you. And then all of a sudden you're like, boom, you collide with it. When you're in longing, you're like, it's above me and I can't reach it. But you're the one putting yourself below it. You have to bring yourself up to it by appreciating your gifts now so that thing can bump into you versus it's above me and I have to fix me to get there. It's like just seeing your value now is going to help you collide with it.
That's all so powerful and well said. I could not agree more. And I think that addiction to longing is like, there's a couple things I want to say is that one, it just becomes a new uncomfortable comfort zone. And it's like always shifting. But two is that we're in a society on the macro scale that's addicted to longing. And there's this sense of like, I hit this last year where I kind of have everything that I need and want. Like, I love my life. I'm so happy. I'm living my dream in so many ways. But I was like almost inventing these ways to like want more or want new things or continually push the bar. And then I had to realize like, this is 100% an addiction to feeling like I should be doing more, should be getting bigger, should be doing XYZ. And as soon as I named that and came back to like the gratitude and joy of exactly what I had right now, like my life satisfaction graph like went through the roof. And I really, really had to look at that addiction to always wanting bigger, better, more within myself. And it had no bearing on my actual life satisfaction. In fact, I was more happy when I let that go.
I mean, it really is constantly because you see people growing and evolving and it can feel like this mirror of like, well, where am I growing and evolving? But I think that's where it's like you have to tune out and like put those blinders on a bit and just feel exactly what you're saying. Feel into your energy. Like, does this moment feel good? Just start there. It doesn't have to be like, does every aspect of my life feel good? Maybe it doesn't. And that's okay. does this moment feel good? Can I find pockets of joy? Can I find pockets of safety? Can I find moments where I feel confident? Can I go on that walk and listen to my favorite song and just be like in the zone? Can I dance in my kitchen? Can I, have those moments where I feel so fully me and present and in my body? That is magnetic. Like that is your authenticity coming online. And that's happening whether your manifestation is here or not. So, not giving it that power and recognizing where you may even be trying to source safety in not having it, in constantly needing to do the work to get there. It's almost like a good student complex. Like, if I do it better, I'll be the best student and I'll never get in trouble and I'll never go to the principal's office. And it's like, you are not in school anymore. You don't need to worry about the principal. You're not going to get in trouble. Like you can live your life and it can look messy and chaotic and you can bring things in when you want. And there's this dance, there's this fluidity and this freedom with manifesting. It's not this, even though there are steps you can apply in practice, it's this like messy, beautiful, magical dance.
Yes. And that's leading me to the thing I wanted to say next, which is like, let it be playful. And I encourage like my students, and I believe that intuitive work is at its best when you're rooted in playful curiosity. And I think that there's a lot of overlap with TBM work and my work, like I was saying in the beginning. But I think that that playfulness, I think Lacey in the book calls it dancing with the universe. I I think that that's a major part of it because that good student complex is so real. Like we're implementing outdated strategies that used to work for us and get us approval, but it's like not about that anymore. It's about a felt embodied experience in the present moment. And so I think that finding those subconscious beliefs that like anything worthwhile has to be hard, or I have to work really hard or suffer to get a good thing at the end. And like I couldn't agree more that the road to happiness isn't always a happy road. Sometimes we have to like go into the deeper, darker depths to get to the place where we can fully embody that happiness and feel that authentically. But I think also approaching this work and noticing where we're making mistakes like life or death and holding the reins so tightly and being really triggered and activated and just seeing like how can I have more fun? How can I have more joy? How can I like take my eye off of the quote unquote prize and just actually fall in love with myself and my life a little bit more.
And that is actually the thing that's going to make you the most magnetic, authentic. And that is the thing that's going to draw things into you because you're living unburdened, you're living freely, you're living authentically, and you can use the tools to get there, but don't let the tools be the limitation on top of you.
Yeah, 100%. And that's almost going back to that point in the beginning of how I felt like before I called in a lot of like my biggest things in my life. I was so happy already. And I was like, I almost don't want, like, I know I'm going to evolve and change at some point, but I'm so content and happy with exactly where I am. And then there's just this like super fast, like everything kind of happened around me.
And then you have to, up level, which that process is even, a bit dysregulating, but you're like, whoa, this is so much new energy coming at me at once. How do I metabolize it in a way that feels good and grounding? It's all part of the process. It's all part of being human.
Yeah, ultimately, this is just a thing called life.
Yeah, exactly.
Every single person is going through like shadow and light at the same time, experiencing duality at the same time. And it takes both to really have the full human experience. But I definitely think we veer on the side of shadow and focusing on what isn't working, isn't happy, isn't enough more, and like a conscious swinging of the pendulum to focusing on not just thinking this should bring me joy, but actually doing what feels joyful to you in the present moment.
Our end of year challenge this year in December is all about that. So I'm very excited.
Yay, I love that. Well, can you tell the hummingbirds? I'm sure most of them already know, but could you just shout out about the book, the tour, just anything you want to say for how they can connect with the work?
Yes. So we are doing a little end of year roadmap to have multiple ways to connect with everyone and just guide you through this transitional season because it's been so big. But we're kicking off with the How to Manifest speaking tour. We're going to be in New York and Austin and LA. We'll be in Austin this coming weekend on November 15th. And then we'll be in LA on December 6th. And then we have the How to Manifest book club going on right now where we're going through the book. You can, cover the chapters with us, do the exercises. If you're a member, you can go and follow along with the How to Manifest workshop. The book club's completely free. So if you're new to this work and wanting to know what are the steps? How do I move through? Be sure to check that out. That'll still be available after we go through. Our end of year challenge is kicking off on December 1st, and this will be a 15-day challenge. You can go at your own pace where you're really walking through healing some of those inner child dynamics, reconnecting, reclaiming your joy and your magic, and a lot of different rituals where you can start to honor that in real time.
Yay, I love that. That's so beautiful. And this conversation has been so magical. I recommend that you guys follow Jess on Instagram too. And she's like a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And I just have to say, too, you're like the kindest person in the world, the most supportive person, and you're such a light beam. So I just couldn't love you more and so happy that you came back on.
Same, same. I echo all of the sentiments. Complete angel.
Oh, yay. Can't wait for everyone to hear this.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, the part of the podcast where we sit with our angels, our guides, our loved ones in the spirit world, and give the messages for the collective. As always, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. And if you know somebody who could benefit from the message, please send it their way. So, the first thing that I want to share today is a deeper message that came through to me while I was sitting in the power about Scorpio season energy and wounds around feeling out of control. So, Scorpio is the sign of death and shadow and rebirth and personal power and control and power struggles. And we're in this moment where it is this collective acknowledgement of our shadow. And Mercury retrograde in Scorpio is so tied to that too, like an examination of the old shadows and the old wounds. And so I feel like there's a lot of layers to this message that's coming through, but control and wounds around control is like a big theme that I feel for this Mercury retrograde cycle. So it was synchronistic that Claire and I were even talking about that in the intro because it feels like it really wants to be talked about. And so there's a few things I want to say. The first message that came through is that the control wound that's coming up feels like there's a lot of layers to it. One is that the world feels so out of control right now. And it feels like there's so many big picture things that feel out of control that it's triggering in us where our inner child felt unsafe and out of control. And then that is leading to us in these unhealed moments trying to control little things that were like we can control these things and making it mean things, attaching meanings to things that don't necessarily mean those things. And so there's something here about just control coming up in unhealed ways and that actually being related to how out of control we feel collectively, and that collective feeling triggering more historical feelings of how we felt out of control. Because when you're a kid, you don't have control over anything. Basically, how your parents show up is just what you have to deal with to survive and cope with. And now it's like, the government and the world and these bigger picture themes might show similar energetic patterns to ways we felt out of control in childhood. And then that might come up in ways that we're trying to over control things. And that's just not serving us. And so, if control wounds are coming up for you right now, if you're feeling really out of control, if you're feeling really triggered, if you're feeling like you're trying to control little things that your higher self knows it's not for the highest good to try to control, I think it's a really powerful moment to sit with your inner child and be like, what's the earliest time I can remember feeling out of control or like my needs weren't being met and I had no control over that? Just getting really deep because the inner child and control stuff feels really relevant in the collective right now. And it might also be highlighting like mother father wounds. It's all tied together. And then with that being said, Scorpio season is a time of death. And the message that I got is like, death is the ultimate teacher of release and trust. Like, we can't control death. And the message that I got is the more we try to control death, the less we live. The more we try to control death, the less we truly live. And so Scorpio season and Scorpio as a sign is like so interesting and layered and dynamic because it's tied to death and rebirth, personal power and control. And all three of those things are, they can't really coexist. Like control and death can't coexist. Control and personal power can't exist. Control and trust can't coexist. And so I feel like there's so many deeper layers right now to the energy that's asking us to step more fully into our power. And it's paradoxical because then it asks us to do that by letting go of the reins a little bit more, stepping deeper into trust. It's the ultimate teacher for control is death. And so, the death and rebirth process is a constant in this human journey. We're never just one thing forever. We're always dying and being reborn. And the more we try to manage, control, force, manufacture that process, the less we're truly fully living. And so then your angels were showing me this torch of consciousness. And it basically felt like we were in this collective moment where there was so much like overthinking, questioning about the future, intensity, like shadows. It just felt like everything was really turned up. And then your angels were showing me this torch of consciousness. And like while we're searching for answers in one area of life, they're illuminating another area. And part of this theme of control is not trying to decipher where the torch goes, but following where the torch goes, following where your consciousness is being led. So you might want answers to one question, but your angels are answering a different question. And they want you to follow that because it leads in a bigger picture way than you could plan for yourself. And there's also lessons around surrender and control and trust and death and rebirth within that. So it felt very beautiful just to surrender and let yourself be led and to fully come into trust that the other puzzle pieces will fall into place, but that right now your angels are leading you in this specific puzzle piece here and now for a reason, and to trust that because we're not completely blind. Definitely the torch is highlighting at least one area of your life where you know what you need to do next, where you know how to take care of yourself, where you see the pattern that wants to be broken, and they're really leading you to dive fully into that. And then I felt throat chakra upgrades coming up, which also makes a lot of sense with the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio around speaking from truth and power, not people pleasing. It's funny because Claire and I were just talking about this before we started recording, and that feels really prevalent right now. Like, not speaking from that place of perceived powerlessness or defensiveness, but just staying in your full power and truth right now feels really important. And then with these kind of bigger picture themes of overthinking, second guessing, I just feel like we've been navigating so much heaviness as a collective. And I just feel like there's so much fear and intensity in the collective. Every single time I tune in, I'm like a broken record about that. But I just want to say if you're feeling that intensity, if life feels really overwhelming, if your inner villain voice is feeling really heightened and really dark, if you're starting to question, like, what's the point, or I can't handle all of this, there's this feeling of like a freeze state response where we just kind of like numb or freeze or shut down and feel very overwhelmed. And the feeling that I get is like, come back to the present moment, take care of your physical body, come back to your breath. You don't have to have all of the answers. You don't have to fix everything. Just come back to the very present moment that you're in. And with micro little baby movements, moment to moment, take care of yourself in ways that are in your power here and now, and help in ways that you can help here and now to be a force for love on earth for yourself and others. And when I pulled a card for the week, as I was feeling in and I pulled a card, I was seeing the Sagittarius Archer bow. And Sagittarius is the sign of like expansion and shooting for what you want. And also, there is a lesson in release of control with Sagittarius too, because if you're always holding the bowstring, at some point you have to let it go and let the arrow fly, or it will never reach its target. And so there is this sense of like shooting for the stars, aiming for things, taking your shot, but then letting it go. And as I saw that Sagittarius archer bow, I pulled the Six of Swords. This is the card of exploration, discovery, and moving on. And usually the Six of Swords comes at a time when we see what we need to sail away from. It's always like this person on a boat sailing into the sunset. And there's just a feeling with the Six of Swords of like, we know what we're walking away from, we know what no longer serves us. Kind of reminds me of this message I gave on an earlier season of Magic Hour about making friends with the Grim Reaper. And Scorpio season is the perfect time to do that. Like the Grim Reaper is actually here to help us make space for something better. The Grim Reaper is here to be a master teacher for us in surrender and control. And so there's so much here that just like we want to embrace the unknown like a lover and show up as our best self for it and learn to dance with it, we want to make friends with the Grim Reaper and trust that they are also a master teacher for us. And so the Six of Swords is like, it's time to move on. We're moving into new energetic territory. We're leaving something behind. And sometimes the Six of Swords can come up when, like, we've been going through a really hard time or a dark night of the soul and we're ready to leave that chapter behind. So, Six of Swords is like new energetic territory, moving on, leaving things in the past, change of scene. I think that's where the Sagittarius bow also comes in. The Six of Swords can also be tied to like taking a trip, going somewhere new, new energetic territory, just shaking up the energy and entering something in a new way after a prolonged period of feeling stuck or heavy or like something difficult was being navigated. So I was really happy when I pulled that card because low key, when I opened the deck, the first card I saw was the Tower. And I was like, oh no, but I hadn't like shuffled or drawn them yet. I just saw the Tower like at the bottom when I was taking it out of the box. And I was like, okay, if I pull the Tower, I pull the Tower. It's just a greater lesson in surrender. But then I pulled the Six of Swords, which was just a much more gentle, uplifting energy. And I think that our angels just knew we needed that win today. So transitioning into the mediumship, I had a young boy in the spirit world. He seemed to be about 5 to me, and it felt like he had heart or lung complications. He made me feel like he was very sick and that he wouldn't have like fully his body wasn't like fully functioning. There was something wrong there. It felt sort of from birth. I also saw that he has a younger sister who's still here. I feel like he would have been named after his grandfather, whether it was just an initial or the same family name. And I feel like there was a sense of him sending song notes and music to his family. And he just had a really short and simple message that sometimes souls come here. And by the way, I don't like to be one to say, like, everything happens for a reason. And we go through these like super sad, tragic, grief filled things so that XYZ could happen. Like, I just feel like sometimes that's a little bit dismissive of the complexity and the layers, and it can dangerously veer into like victim shaming or blaming sometimes. And it just seems like a very human way to need to feel in control, to have an explanation for everything. Like, this sad thing happened, and this is the explanation on a soul level why. And sometimes I just don't think that that is helpful to hear or productive to hear as, you know, somebody who's been through traumatic grief filled things. It's like, I don't resonate when people say things like that to me. I'm like, it just seems like human projection from a need to be like, and this is why this horrible thing happened. So, all right, here you go. Like, all good now. And so I'm not saying this from that perspective at all. I think that there are reasons for things. And then there's also sometimes just chaos in the universe that's out of our control. It's like we're not in control of every single person's decision, every single place, and there is chaos on earth. So I acknowledge that. But with that being said, I felt like this little boy was such a heart opener for his family. He feels like he was the first child to come in. And then I feel like there was a sister that came in. And this little boy's love, like as I was tuning into him, it was just this bubble of golden light. And I'm not saying that he came in just to do that, but I am saying that I feel like that was part of the experience. And I feel like his passing, there's something here about like initiating the family into greater service and greater love. And I feel like there would have been something there with like a rare heart condition or something about his passing where it feels like this family is now doing things like volunteering at a foundation or doing organized walks to raise awareness for things. And the message that I get is like our loved ones in spirit, when we continue in the physical world to like do things in their name or their honor to make the world a better place, like it is just this most overwhelming feeling of love as he was talking about that. Like it makes them feel just so alive and there's such a beautiful feeling there. It's really hard to articulate, but we have more power than we think we do when we come together and we care. And I know that we can't all tackle every single problem in the world and it can get really overwhelming. But if you even start with the problems that are in your heart, in your community, in your family, and just come together and allocate some time and energy towards service in that way, your loved ones on the other side are helping orchestrate that, and also it's just helping the world in a bigger way. And it starts to, like I say, being powerful is a practice, and the more we come together and practice what is in our power to make the world a better place, the more we start to expand and understand and evolve and grow. And it feels like our ancestors in the spirit world are really helping us to birth something new. And that's the feeling that I get is like so much talk of Scorpio season with like death and release, but that's also so that there can be new life and rebirth. And it just feels like our loved ones in spirit care so, so deeply, of course, and that there's a way that they are guiding our consciousness to make the world a better place. And when we do that in honor of them, it's one of the most powerful acts of ancestral honoring that we could ever do.
Ah, that's so beautiful, Taylor, and just such a beautiful way to anchor, I think, in a moment where we can feel so overwhelmed by the problems that we're facing. It's like, knowing that we're supported and knowing that we can tackle them like in honor of someone that has passed that we love and know that they're championing us on the other side gives me a lot of hope and courage in moments where it feels so overwhelming.
Yeah. And I think that, so often with mediumship and our ancestral practices, we can so focus on like an ancestor altar or our own ancestors. And those are such beautiful practices, especially for like healing our own lineage. And that has a ripple effect of healing in the world. And I love that. People already think this way. But I think also reframing and expanding our idea of how we can honor our ancestors into acts of service, love, and kindness to make the world a better place in their name is also a really powerful way to think of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like carrying on their work. I think about that as a woman. It's like all of the women that came before me that fought for us to have freedoms and to live as liberated women, and I get to carry on that fight in their honor. It's such a beautiful connection we have, and sometimes I think about that when I'm out as like a single woman, being free, that like how many ancestors, how many women are with me in spirit dancing and celebrating this freedom that they helped achieve. It makes me want to cry just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And sometimes, losing a loved one cracks our heart open in a way that, birth and death are just two of the biggest heart opener moments that there can be. And I think filling that grief and a little part of what their physical presence left behind with something beautiful to make the world a better place, like service is just so healing because it takes all of the focus off of what isn't right or what's going on with us in our personal life and puts it back on something that just is so rewarding tenfold. And I feel like that's what our spirit guides and our ancestors are doing for us. Like they're just in life of service to us, like guiding us, helping us, teaching us. And when we can turn around and be in service in that way to our fellow humanity and human beings, like that just brings us to a closer energetic match to our loved ones and our guides. And helps us hear their guidance so clearly.
Yeah, yes, that's such a beautiful way to think of it. And something else you said too, just about, you know, I think we're so much more powerful than we realize. And I think sometimes that power starts in a small way. It's like I can positively affect the people immediately around me with my love, my support, my light, my encouragement, my positivity. And that alone has a ripple effect. Like if we are all just doing that one shift, imagine the dynamics of the world if we were all living in that vibration. I mean, how could there possibly be conflict and war if we were all able to do that? And that's so possible within our own power. Like, we don't have to defeat a government institution to do that. We can just start in that small way with the love and light that we can offer to the people immediately around us.
Yeah. And that's why one of our coven members, Tori Feldman, who's been a guest on the pod twice, 118 and 228, she says that she really believes that ancestral healing is the path to world peace. That, like, if every lineage did that ancestral healing work, how could there be war and trauma? But like, war and trauma begets more war and trauma. And it just continues until someone in the lineage shows up and says, I'm complete with this cycle and I make a new choice.
Yes, that is such a good point. We really are so powerful, even though sometimes it feels like we're not. And so I think trusting in that and finding the ways that we can shift the storyline from where we're standing.
Yeah. And I think going back to that idea of control, sometimes we think like that holding the reins of control so tightly is what makes us powerful. But actually, I think that that vibration of feeling like we have to hold the reins so tightly betrays how little power we really feel. I think that when we actually are in our full power, we're in alignment with trust so deeply because we know we'll be okay no matter what. We have our own backs and we trust ourselves, and so just wrapping it up back to that idea of control, noticing where you're actually subconsciously or consciously in a deep way showing yourself or the universe that you don't feel powerful by trying to hold on to everything.
Yes, that's such a good point. It's like that is a sign of feeling powerless, is that I must control what's happening because I won't be okay if it isn't exactly the way I think it needs to be. But if we are so powerful that no matter what comes our way, we can face it, we don't need to control. And I know we've all had this experience, then when we can release into the trust and the flow of what is happening and where we are being led, like you said, with that beautiful flame analogy, it's like, that is then where the magic really starts to flow because we are in flow and we're saying yes to the flow versus almost like cutting the water off and damming the flow of the water up and saying, like, no, 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 the water needs to flow in this other direction. It's like, what if we could trust that flowing with the way the water is going, we will still be able to face whatever challenges we get to, and we're also telling the universe, like, yes, I trust you and I trust myself.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I love that. That's such a good description. And I think also control is an illusion anyway. And that's why I think death is that master teacher for it. It's like we're not really controlling being born or dying. It's like we're all just on this road. And the more we can be present and regulated with ourselves and practicing our power, the more graceful we navigate this duality that we've incarnated into.
Yeah, absolutely. And embracing, like, I think we think of death and life as separate, but like creation and destruction are all part of the same thing. The rose being born and blossoming and decaying is all part of the rose, is all part of how the rose exists. It's not that the rose exists and then it dies. It's the way the rose exists is within its death as well. And I think when we can embrace the wholeness of that experience, we don't feel as disjointed, or we can just see the magic of both.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I'll say is I know our spirit people on the other side understand that like as well. And there always is this sense of like, I wish I would have just enjoyed the present moment more. It's never, I wish I would have controlled a little harder. It's like, it's such a gift being here, and it's so easy to care about that gift so deeply that we try to control it. But there's something just so freeing in surrendering to the lazy river and sometimes the riptide of where the currents are taking us and just following that torch of consciousness. So I just loved this conversation today so deeply. And I know there's so many gems here. This might be an episode to listen to again because there's just so much in it. And yeah, I'm wishing you all a really beautiful week, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Magic Hour podcast. We are so happy you're here. I absolutely love to connect with you all on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. I love to get your thoughts on each episode, and I get so excited to get your emails to contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss a new episode in your inbox. We have so many amazing guests right around the corner, as always. Please make sure to send your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to contact@magichourpod.com, and we'll enter you into an angel reading giveaway with me, which is just my favorite thing to get to connect with the hummingbird community in that way. You get a bonus entry if you also send a screenshot of your YouTube subscription and also a screenshot of sharing us on your story and tagging us at Magic Hour Podcast on Instagram. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 288 5-star reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We so appreciate you sharing the podcast with other magical people, and it really helps us keep this project alive. To learn more about me, my work, to book a reading with me, to take a workshop, please visit angelsandamethyst.com. And remember, you are magic.